Welcome to another episode of War Hero to Superhero, helping military veterans and first responders transform their lives from the prayer room to the boardroom. Sorry for the glitch. I'm your host, Daniel Faust, and we are in the Superhero Battle Room with J.R. Spear. He is a military man that has served his country and is now serving our community by bringing networking and influence to your biz. So go over and watch. Don't forget, you don't just have to watch the clips. You can watch the whole episode. We are on YouTube, and we'll talk more about how you can uplift JR and our other War Hero to Superheroes at the end of the show. Hey, JR, do I have you?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome, awesome. Good to have you in the studio. So we're just going to go dive right in like we do our normal question. What inspired you to join the military many months or moons ago?
Yeah, so this is back in high school where I was a trouble kid and always getting not knowing exactly the direction and the path I wanted to go into. And at this time I ended up getting in trouble with the law and lost my driver's license. And there was a very specific day I was in junior year of high school where I got fired from my job. I needed to get some money to pay the court off some fees and didn't have any cash, and I lost my license at this time too. So my grandma came over to my house, and I asked her, I said, "Hey, grandma, can you drive me to some pawn shops so that way I can sell some items, make some money, and be able to pay off some of my court fees?" And she agreed. So I loaded up her car. She's driving down the streets in St. Louis and taking me down to the pawn shops. And then while we're down the main strip, she's passing by. I'm like, "Hey, grandma, where are you going?" And she just like looks at me, tells me to shut up, and pulls around a shopping center. And there was Best Buy, and there was a bunch of other stores and things that were there. And right in front of me, right when she parked the car, was the recruiter station. And she says, "You're going to walk in there, you're going to sign for the military, and I don't care what branch it is, but you're not coming out until you do." And at this time, I had no intentions of ever signing up for the military, but I didn't know any direction of where I wanted to go. So I knew I wasn't going to go to college at the time because I was barely even graduating or doing well in high school. And going to college just wasn't a path. And so the military, I knew that I wouldn't go Air Force or Army. My grandfather was retired Navy. My uncle, he was a Marine. And so I just had this thought process, be like, okay, if I'm going to go, it's going to be one of those two. But at that time, I'm sitting with my grandma, and I go, well, I don't want to go in the Marine Corps because they work too hard. And so I'll just do what what my grandfather did. So I walked in there, talked to the Navy recruiter, and I end up moving forward with the same job that my grandfather did, which was aviation boatswain handler. And that's kind of like the story of what got me in. But, God has a different personality. So I didn't want to go to the Marines at all. Just, like I said, because I just thought that they worked too hard. But, when I went into boot camp as a aviation boatsman handler, which is like a fuelman that fuels up the jets on top of the carriers and stuff, thought it'd been a really cool job. Through the transition of the time that I joined the military my junior year until I actually left after my senior year, I had a really, encounter with Jesus and transformed my life and just rededicated the Christmas after, and just really wanted to go full in on ministry in some way. And I signed up for a missions trip that I ended up going to right after I graduated high school. And at that time, my God had a different path for me. So I go into boot camp, and a couple weeks in, I wasn't really getting bought into like what the Navy did for themselves in boot camp. It wasn't what I expected or anything like that. But I found out about this job, while I was in Great Lake, Chicago, about going with the Marines. So here I wanted to avoid the Marines, but now I'm like, you know what? I want to go be with the Marines. And I wanted to actually be a Marine at this time. But I talked to my drill instructor and my senior chief at that time, and they're like, well, you can't go to the Marine Corps because you signed a contract with the Navy. And so I found out about these two jobs where you could either be a Navy corpsman or you can be an RP, which is a religious program specialist, ultimately providing security for the chaplain. And I ended up making that switch from what I was doing to becoming an RP. And it's funny because when I was asking about switching over to the Marine Corps, we were all the other shipmates were in our bay, and there's about 70 of us or whatever, standing in front of our racks, and the drill instructor just kind of in the center talking to us as normal. I stepped out in the center and just really gutsy, and I looked at him. He's this tall guy, bald, just really scary individual. And I said, "Hey, how can I switch over to the Marine Corps? Because this isn't what I expected." And he didn't have any words. He just looked down at me with this evil look and just did an about face, turned around and walked away. And I was like, that's not what I was expecting. And but then the senior chief later on came. So that's kind of how I got inspired to go. It was my grandmother that really inspired me to move. And then even though I signed up for the Navy, I ended up spending the next 4 years with the United States Marine Corps and loved every majority of it. I can't say I loved all of it. You know, I had a pretty rough deployment at that time when I deployed with 2-4 2nd Battalion 4th Marines in 2006 to Iraq. But for the most part, I don't think I would have enjoyed the Navy as much as I did the Marine Corps. And a lot of my closest friends today, you know, are people that I met while I served and during that time.
That is crazy. Like, I already struggled enough with the Air Force basic training and almost left in 4th week. And you're telling the drill instructor, this is nothing. I want more. I want to go to a more intense branch. That is insane. Man.
Well, I mean, a lot of the sailors and shipmates there, they're sitting there whining about running a half a mile or a quarter mile and doing push-ups and sit-ups. I'm like, you know, I grew up doing martial arts since I was 3 years old, being yelled at my entire life in the martial arts school. Like that, to me, that was nothing. And I wanted to go shoot real guns. In the Navy boot camp, they just do simulators and, you know, and they swim a little bit, which half the company couldn't even swim. So it was just I was expecting a lot more. I wanted to be out in the field.
Yeah, my son actually is deciding Navy. He goes to MEPS just a couple days from now. So people
nice.
go over and like, they're like, what happened? Like, did you disappoint your son? I said, I want him to make his own choice. Everybody goes over and is like, why didn't you choose Air Force? I'm like, oh, because he hates me. No, I'm like, I want him to make his choice. So he's looking at engineer or nuclear. So yeah, so it's interesting. He's going to go to the harder branch because we went to the Air Force recruiter and we went to the Navy recruiter and he decided Navy. And my wife's like, what? He decided Navy? I'm like, yeah, let him make his choice. I think it's going to be better for him. I think he's going to have that come to Jesus moment too, because he's going to realize I'm like, dad's militaristic mind is not just dad. It's you going in a harder branch. So we'll see next steps, but let's get back to you. So you served about what, 4 years, correct?
Yeah, I did 4 and done. So okay. I went in, I went in right out of high school in 2003 and then got out in 2007. I had every intention of making a career out of it. And, you know, my job being an RP, a religious program specialist, my main only goal was to provide security for the chaplain. And so, you know, my first duty station was in Quantico, Virginia. And I was with the Officer Candidate School for Marines, where we trained, train Marine officers before they got commissioned. And loved it. It was awesome. And then I got handpicked. I was supposed to be there for like my entire 4 years, but you know, early on, before I met my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife for almost 16 years, you know, we started dating a year after me being there and stuff. And before I met her, I put my name on a list that if an opportunity came up to deploy, that I wanted to be selected to go. I didn't hear anything from the Pentagon or anyone for, you know, forever at this time. And a couple of years go by, and then I get this message and around Thanksgiving in 2005 saying, hey, we need you to ship out and pack your stuff and go. And so it was around that time, December 2005, that they packed all my stuff up, shipped me out from Virginia to Camp Pendleton, California, where I would be assigned to 2nd Battalion 4th Marines and deploy on the 15th MU. And, you know, when I first got there, they were kind of in limbo. Like that, the HQ didn't even know where I was going, didn't even know I was coming there. But essentially, I was replacing someone that got in trouble, and they needed someone to replace him. And the 2-4 was just getting back from the 31st MU. And so once they got back from that deployment, then we had to do our workouts to prepare for the 15th MU to head out. And so I ended up getting with them during that time. And, you know, this is my first time actually being out with the grunts in the field. Even though I was with a bunch of grunts at OCS, I was at a training base my first tour, and I loved it. I loved being, I mean, I did a lot of training with the recon, the snipers, and, you know, anything that I wanted to do for training wise, you know, I pretty much got to do, because, you know, the chaplain went everywhere with the CO, the sergeant major, and we just needed to be prepared for anything. And so I had a lot of really cool experiences there. And then, but, you know, when I got to Iraq, there was one significant moment that pretty much changed the whole trajectory of my entire life. And not even just that instance, but I survived a suicide bombing on February 7, 2007 at a walking checkpoint in Barwana, Iraq. And I was standing about 7 feet away from a guy that, you know, was walking through, lifted his arm, strapped a C4 and blew himself up. And I'm here by the grace of God, and I'm just really thankful for the opportunities to be able to share my stories, talk to others. And but it was that moment that I realized that I wanted to have a family, get back, propose to my girlfriend at that time, and and lead a different life, and just knew that the military wasn't going to be the place for a family. And so I decided to go that route and have a family and just move forward in the different direction. But it was a really good 4 years, and I had to say that I miss every bit of it. I tried going in as a Marine Corps officer a few years later after I got my degree of getting out, but due to my injuries from that I ended up taking from that blast, it was hard to get in, and with all the medical stuff that I had to deal with and things like that. So I end up just you know owning the fact that okay, this is a different life. But I would have retired a couple years ago and stayed in, and I just had to move forward with a different life. But I loved my time, my experience, and what I got to actually do while I was in the active duty.
That is very interesting. I was thinking about that day that you said February 7th, 2007. I got married December 18th of '06. And on February 1st, I was told I'm moving work centers, I'm having my first child, and then I'm deploying. So I was preparing for your deployment during that season. And it's amazing on how our lives can be so different, even though we're all doing different things on different days. So, like February 7th, I'm mentally preparing for deploying. You're literally going through probably one of the most horrific things in your life on that particular day. It's just amazing how God aligns things. And it's like, and then what we can handle and not handle at the same time. I'm pretty sure if I was told the first and I was at your place February 7th, I would have been broken. Would have just I'm even imagining what you went through and broken. So in that particular garden, just it's how God's providence and you're using it as a testimony, which is a beautiful thing. So you did 4 years, served well and everything else, but how did you make your transition to a transformation? Because you get 4 years, you get out, you're probably E4, E5, everything else, and then you're coming out, and especially if you're fully invested into the military, don't know if you have the education degrees and all the certifications just to get out there. Did it go well for you? Did you make it a transformation instantaneously, or was it kind of a struggle?
You know, I've always had a very driven personality of who I am and what I do and stuff like that. And so when I was overseas in Iraq, I was already planning to go to college, and I originally was signed up to go to Bible school, and I did. I went to a Bible college for the first semester of school in my education, and I really didn't have much of a break because we got back from deployment May 31st, 2007. I was out by July 10th, and then moved back to St. Louis, Missouri, where I'm originally from. And I didn't have any job planned or anything like that. I was just knowing that I was going to school. So ended up getting ready to go to school and just took some side jobs here and there while I was there. But I didn't allow myself to process. I'm just coming back from the sandbox, wearing the uniform, to now trying to figure out life on my own. And so I'm living in the basement of my mom's house for the first 3 to 4 months of me being home. And the transition of going from the military to civilian life to going now to school, I didn't allow myself to process, and it was hard. I mean, in the beginning, it was pretty easy because I just kept myself busy, and I found that the more busy I was, that I kept staying active, the more I didn't allow myself to kind of sink in and dwell, think, or anything like that. And I would just go nonstop, because even while I was going to school that same time, I started my first business. I knew I didn't want to go work for anyone. I was like, screw it. I've just been the last 4 years I've been told what to do, when to do it, how to do it. Now I want to start my own business so I can be my own boss. And I leaned on what I knew best, which was martial arts. I knew how to teach martial arts. I've been training since I was 3, teaching since I was about 10. When I was active duty, I trained a lot of Marines and sailors in martial arts. I even taught at a school outside of base when I was in Virginia for a couple of years. And so it was something that was very natural to me in transitioning that. Right. I was good at teaching, but at that time, I was not a great business owner. I knew nothing about business, how to do it, or anything like that. So I'm going to Bible school, originally learning I wanted to go full-time music ministry. And while I was doing that, even though I gained a lot of great practical stuff and Old Testament survey and things like that, I realized I didn't want to be what I call a professional Christian and just go into full-time ministry on that sense. I looked at full-time ministry as being the battlefield of the things I was doing, and I had just as much impact to be able to serve, help people in the ministry aspect from my everyday work and what I was doing. And I didn't need to have a paycheck coming from the church to justify what I was doing. So I ended up I started building my martial arts school. It's probably like around that September of 2007 as well, while I was going to school. And then I just did one semester of Bible school and ended up going to pursue a business degree and, just a regular business administration from the local community college, and then move that to online. But I'll say the transition was a bit of a challenge because there were a couple key moments that I won't forget that happened that same year. One, I was, there was another Marine that was at the Bible school with me. His name was John, and we're sitting around lunch table and we're just talking. He just got back from Fallujah the year prior to me, and we were sitting around just sharing, the dark humor is what we would say in the military, the dark humor, but we find it as just being normal. And so we're just talking, chit chatting, sharing war stories, everything that was going on, like it's just a normal thing. And after about an hour and a half or 2 hours of chatting, both of us were just kind of into it. Weren't even paying attention to what was around us. There was probably 10, 15 people sitting around us. And like the girls were like all in tears, and there was just a lot of emotion. Me and him look at each other. We're like, wow, first off, we didn't know anyone was sitting around us. Two, we didn't even realize that they were hearing the stories we were doing and just how impactful it was to them. And it was eye-awakening to me that, wow, there's something wrong. Like the dark humor that we find was normal for us, but it wasn't normal for the everyday life and civilians to be able to capture that. So that was an eye-awakening time for me on there. And then there was another time where, while I was at the Bible school, I was doing the music ministry. So I was part of the worship team. We would travel to different conferences and lead worship and music and playing guitar and stuff. And we had an event that we were leading worship to in downtown St. Louis, and my car was parked in the parking garage. And I remember walking up to it, and probably 25, 50 yards away from it, I just stopped. I froze. And this is like the first time that I actually truly felt and experienced PTSD at this level. And I ended up dropping my bag and my suitcase and my guitar, everything on the ground. I'm like looking at my car, and I'm sweating, I'm shaking, I just can't move. And it took a lot of willpower and strength to be able to self-talk me out of it, thinking it was going to be okay. But I was just terrified to get up to that car because, going in combat when you're always in Humvees and just getting scared of getting back on that road, just not knowing what's going to happen, whether there's going to be a kid throwing a grenade in the back of your Humvee or if there's going to be an IED on the side of the road. It took me probably a good 10 to 15 minutes to self-talk me and thinking that everything's going to be okay to get back in the car. And then there was another moment where my wife, when we went downtown to an event and in St. Louis, and there was a concert going on and a bunch of activity, food trucks and stuff like that. And as the night went on, there was a building just one street over on Market Street, and they started shooting off fireworks. Well, you got to understand, my job was to provide security for that chaplain. So, immediately I just took action, and I threw Natalie, my wife, to the ground, and pretty much made a circle around us, and, thinking that just ready to fight, and just was completely in a completely different space mentally and, visually and stuff like that. I remember just feeling and looking like white as a ghost, and then we ended up picking up and leaving at that time. So the transition was a little bit rough, but I'll say that it was staying busy that helped me immediately. But it was once we started getting comfortable and in different environments and stuff like that, that I didn't realize that there were certain triggers that were getting to me, in different moments. And there's still times today where I still struggle. And it's been, to almost 20 years or 18 years or whatever since I've been back.
Yeah, I think it is a struggle for all of us in different ways to go over and to break, because it's such a culture shift. Again, I just bring up my son, for example. He's been a civilian with us, traveling from base to base. He doesn't think of himself military until he forgets his ID. But I could see probably like 12 months from now, it's going to be a totally different shift. I don't even remember myself. I went in And I still roll my sleeves to this day because of the military. It's kind of one of those things. And it was like 6 months in, I remember being in my dorm room and I was going to class and I'm looking myself in the mirror. I'm like, I am military. Like I was looking at myself as 6 months, like in the mirror, but I didn't process myself. And I think it's the other way around when we get out. It's like we're still being transformed. So that's cool that you at least got an awareness now of those types of things. And that's really amazing that you are working through that and having God in it, because sometimes when we don't, we kind of do the secularized things. We drink it out, we smoke it out, sometimes we gun it out, and sometimes we leave it out. And that's unfortunate when we lose our brethren. So I'm thankful that we didn't lose you in this time. So as this transformation is going, what made you pivot to what you're doing today? Because you went from martial arts to something else. I'm pretty sure based on what I see online and everything else, unless you're roundhousing people as you're going networking, what made you pivot to what you're doing today?
Yeah, I actually had a lot of different transformations. So I had the martial arts school and I built that up to be super successful and ended up selling it after a couple of years. And then I immediately shifted over to fitness. So I wanted to teach more adult fitness and classes and stuff like that. I didn't want a brick and mortar. I ended up expanding what was called Power Fit Bootcamp at the time to in less than 18 months to 4 different cities. At one time we had about 50 different locations that we provided classes at. I had about 30 instructors working for me, and that was a huge piece of of who I was, and I loved it because it was community. I think I can speak for a lot of veterans that when we get out, one big piece that we miss more than anything is the camaraderie and the brotherhood. And I was just so hungry on finding those people, the people that I can connect with and I can relate to. And at this time, I'm a triathlete. I'm always a competitive fighter, which after getting, blown up in the stuff that I ended up dealing with in Iraq, that stopped my fighting days. But it's finding that community. And so, but it was during this time when I was running the boot camps and, for after about 8 years or 7 years or however long it was, I realized that I enjoyed coaching my staff and my team on business, how to host events, how to sell, how to connect with people, how to communicate, that more than I did about helping people lose weight. I was great at helping people lose weight. I was great at providing classes and building community and stuff like that. But I wanted to make a bigger impact. And the way I saw it was if I can help more entrepreneurs and instructors and fitness coaches and professionals go out there and build their businesses to grow, then ultimately we're going to make a bigger impact longer term. And it's been an amazing experience. So in 2016, me and my wife, we were having our first child and we wanted to move back to where her family was in Northern Virginia. And I wanted to make a pivot and shift and be like, hey, you know what? It was a good ride doing the fitness, but I want to help more fitness coaches and professionals and get more into business consulting. I have a bachelor's in business, and I have the experience of coaching and leading and teaching in the fitness space, how to create offers, how to do events, how to do all those different things that I wanted to do that full time. And so I launched my consulting business, and I went through a couple different phases where originally I was building three businesses at the same time. I had 100K Fit Pro, which is my consulting. I had Fit Pro funnels where I was building like sales funnels for personal trainers and fitness professionals. And then I bought into a publication franchise where I helped build for my local community where I live even today, a publication and advertising, things like that to help bring it closer together. And it was a good way for me to get to know my neighbors. And so I transitioned to that. And then after a couple of years, I ended up changing the name and combining 100K Fit Pro and Fit Pro funnels into Creed Consulting, which, moving forward to 2022, I ended up launching something called Business Leaders Network, which is what BLN stands for. And that's an executive leadership mastermind, tied in with, education, visibility, and community, where we help small business owners with growth and development of their business. And just really fell in love with it. And it's really cool to see how God really prepared me for all those steps. Because even while I was building those businesses, I've had other B2B sales jobs, and I've had quick sales where I was selling direct TV and different stores and just a bunch of different stuff. But everything that I've done has prepared me for what I'm able to do today. And So, if someone's coming to me and saying I need help with government contracting or whatever, I have that experience. I have experience with B2B sales, B2C sales, everything from attorneys, junk removal people to, marketing agencies to, consulting or fitness, whatever it may be. And so I'm well versed in what I do. And then even today with Business Leaders Network, our top funnel of the offer that I do is really helping small business owners and coaches launch their next one-day event to help them generate more cash fast, as well as generate more leads. And that's been my one true offer and system that I've been able to do since I had the martial arts school. My coach at the time taught me how to host one-day events, and I've been able to duplicate that process ever since. So going from the transition from going to college, building the martial arts school, to now doing consulting, it's just cool how God had prepared my steps from day one of the military to even where I'm at today, to make me well versed to be able to help more entrepreneurs and leaders build and grow where they're at. And he's really stepped me into a place of leading Christian leaders as well. And I've had a lot of amazing opportunities where I get to lead worship. And now a church locally where I'm at is asking me to create a Christian conference for entrepreneur leaders, and that's starting to expand and grow as well. So it's just cool to see how things keep evolving.
That is the amazing thing, is that you niche down, you finally figure out the niche, and then you get it up and rolling, and then you get to spin some other plates that you want to go over and do. I think that's the military side of us. We have to learn how to take this, get it down to this, and then get up and rolling, and then we're allowed to then go bless and do more. So that's really cool. And I totally agree with that model. We're working with a strategic coach right now with my wife. Like, we're getting that first prayer room up and rolling. We're doing a master class on the 7th of May, and we've been working with him to get that out there. So we've taken the book and got that up and rolling, which then comes into the master experience, which then comes into the coaching program. So it's a really cool guy. His name is Justin Boyum. He's out of Round Rock, Texas. So I totally agree with that. So, and I think it's really cool that's kind of in line of what's going in the world today, is that we need to go and get that. So if you are a coach, you are a consultant, and you need to go get that experience, I'd recommend JR. I've been friends with him for years and everything else. And that is the model that we are growing to, even in an AI world, is that we need to get it in there, get her done, and then branch out. So with that, you have a lot of coaching, you have a lot of experience, you have all these types of things, but I know you still run into pressure and tough times. Like, what do you utilize now post-military to deal with the pressure and tough times come? Because it's not things that you've dealt with like right in front of your face, like in the sense of hostile environment, but there's still hostile times that could trigger things. So what do you deal with it now, and how do you go over and to be effective when those tough times come?
Yeah, so I love this question, because this is the one thing that goes deep, and I believe that any veteran that's watching this needs to really resonate, or can resonate with what I'm going to say, and if they don't, then they need to really seek a little bit deeper. But there's a few things that we need as leaders need to understand that we can't deal without. And I'm going to say number one is faith. Like, if it wasn't for my faith and my relationship with Christ, I will not be standing here today. I'm sure I can speak for a lot of us that we get through those moments where we don't feel deserving enough to even want to live life anymore. And that's why suicide is so high. And I have to say that, if it wasn't for my faith and my relationship with Christ, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. And the second thing is accountability, where we all need community. If we don't have community and people that we're plugged into that gives us purpose, life, identity, and vision for where we're going, then it's really clear that Scripture says that we will fail. Without vision, we will perish. And so we need to make sure that we are standing strong, that we're part of a community, that we have those people, and that we're seeking daily with our Father in heaven, and just constantly keeping them involved inside of our lives. But without those two things, it's hard to really navigate the pressures in life. As entrepreneurs and leaders, God, we always hear like God doesn't give us more than what we can handle, but there's a lot of people that don't really understand that truthfully and wholly, because they're like, hey, I can handle all this. Why do I not have this? Why has not God blessed me with all these different things? And the truth is, you can't handle it. And there's still times that I go through. Even just recently, I was challenged with certain stuff, and if I would have been dealt with it years ago, I wouldn't be able to navigate through where I'm at now. And there's different things that we, as entrepreneurs and leaders, that we had to learn certain skill sets to be able to navigate bigger times. And there's more pressure, there's family pressure, there's client pressure, there's economic and political pressure. I mean, there's so many different things that we deal with on a regular basis. And this is a lot of part of my message where I say I help entrepreneur leaders learn how to be prepared for the day that they get ambushed, because every one of us is going to get ambushed sometime in life, whether it's going to be in their business, the client leaving, or employee quitting or leaving, or a family member, yourself getting sick, like COVID, a pandemic, a recession. How are you going to navigate it? Are you going to be prepared for it? Or are you going to be reactive and not knowing how to walk you through it? And the military, one thing that they taught all of us really well is being mission focused. When you understand what that mission is, when you understand what that vision is, and don't confuse the two, because the vision is like the destination where you're going, and the mission is the process of how you get there. But when you're clear on the vision and the mission of how you're going to get there, then it should be unstoppable on knowing, all right, this is what I'm going to do. This is what we got to take. This is what I got to prepare for to make sure we get there. Because before we step foot on the sand in Iraq, we didn't just say, okay, now we're going to combat, let's go. No, we had to prepare. We did our workouts. We had to learn how to shoot our weapons. We had to learn how to interact with, other people of different nationalities. We need to learn how to sleep in uncomfortable positions, and even how to use the restroom in different places that you don't normally have different things, how to eat food, and just the culture and everything that you're going to adapt to, and how to knock down doors. And when there's a bombing going off, how do we respond and do your job and react? And so business and life is no different. And we have to constantly be in training to know and what to do and be prepared for that day that we get ambushed. But for me, it's like, if I didn't have my faith, and if I didn't have accountability with my church members and my friends and those type of people, I wouldn't know if I would be able to navigate the pressures of life of what we go through. And especially, with family dynamic and business dynamic, it's like we need to make sure that we keep him number one and involved, and not make him the back seat in what we do. But we got to make sure that we're constantly allowing him to be fully present and involved in our daily life and our work. So those two things, your faith as well, and your relationship with Christ, as well as accountability. Those are the two things that I highly recommend for anyone when it comes to dealing with the pressures of life.
Sounds like you watched my live before coming on there, because I talked about you knowing your master and your mission, and then know your mate. And that's the thing that I screwed up so many times when I got out. I tried to go over and to get to know my mission without knowing my master. And then hopefully then I would get to know my mate better. And then when I got ambushed, being broke, almost going homeless, 4 unalive attempts in the family, still reservists and everything else, almost losing a stripe, getting it back, all these other moves and everything else. Yeah, we need to understand those things effectively, because unfortunately those things will happen. Those trials do come. I wish that they didn't. But the thing is that the trials can be used as a testimony. The mess can be used as a message. The wounds can be used for wisdom, and the pain can be used for purpose. And it sounds like that you are grounded to go over and to take that, live through that, and then go over and then deliver that in your business, because that's the reason why it grows, is because you've been ambushed and you have gone over and taken it and then learned from it, and then you're able to equip it to others. So I love it. That's like beautiful. I never thought about being ambushed in a sense, but yeah, it's the same thing with the fiery arrows that come out when it talks about Ephesians. Most of it is protective, defensive, and we only go offensive with one out of Ephesians 5. I think it's 22 to 28. I'm paraphrasing super quick, but no, 6. Ephesians 6 is the armor of God.
Ephesians 6 is the armor of God.
Yeah, 10 through 18. Yep, little rusty. So, but yeah, definitely most of it's defensive.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because when I look at an ambush, we have to understand what that is, and it's anything that takes us by surprise. And there's I just talked to one of my newer clients in the past couple months recently, and I will say, like, probably 30 or 40% of her income was reliant on one client. And there was this one client that she just despised working with. He was just very high pressured, very demanding on a lot of the different stuff, and she just wasn't happy. And so we talked through it, and I was like, okay, well, do you want to work with him or do you not want to? And she took action, and she ended up firing that client, and just so much weight lifted off of her shoulders. And then God was able to show up and bless her even further. And that income wasn't even a phase, because it was replaced by other things. But could you imagine that if she was 100% reliant on that income that was, let's just say 50 or 60% of her revenue, and then he ended up choosing to leave and it wasn't by her choice and she wasn't ready for it, what do you do? And most people aren't ready for that. They're not ready for their family member getting sick that's going to pull them out of work for a couple of weeks, or not ready for this type of client that end up quitting, or an employee quitting, or a car transportation getting messed up, whatever it may be. And we got to make sure that our heart, our mind, our processes, our systems, everything is in place so that we are ready and prepared for the day that you get ambushed.
Yeah, I have plenty of stories doing that. Helped some guy publish a book, and then it took me 3 years to get him off my back, and then paid off, and then everything distributed back. I remember doing digital TV. Now the company's dissolved, but I put myself in a place that I was able to let go, but then I had to be under NDA and CNC. So I've had those ambush lessons, but God even uses those ambush lessons. It's really cool. I'm like, to go over, if you allow it to be used, God can restore those ambush lessons that you were talking about. It's like 30-40% of your client loads that, and then you let it go. You can be freaked out because you're like, that's like oxygen. And then God says, hey, open hands, it's learning to surrender, and he's going to go give better. So I think that was really cool on what you shared about there. But now we go into a last question, which is kind of like an ambush. But if you've ever watched any of my episodes, you'll know the question. If you haven't, then this will be an ambush to you. So, but I think you'll be fine, as we talked in the three superhero tactics. So you're coaching somebody, either your past self or you're coaching a client, and you only have a couple minutes with them. Maybe you're going to the military influencer conference and you meet somebody, wherever it is. Maybe it's at an event that's coming out soon, and you only have a couple minutes. How do you get them from surviving to thriving in like 3 tactics or less?
Yeah, so really simple. I mean, when I hold true of how I've been able to build, or that got me out of stressful times, I teach people about how to leverage one-day events to not only get fast cash, but also to generate more leads and high quality leads inside of their business. So three tactic strategies. But one, identify the type of event that you want to be able to do and who you want it to be, go towards, and why they need to be there. And really thinking about the type of event that you're going to do, which are 6 different events that I go through, whether it's going to be a webinar or a summit or a vendor expo, a networking event, a VIP day, or I think I named it all right there, but 6 different types of events that we could choose from, and each one of them has a different purpose or goal. So if you're looking at strategy, first we need to identify the type of event that we need to do, and then we need to be accountable and book it, day, time, and location, and then we need to execute on the mission that we need to go after. But for anyone that's out there saying, hey, you know what, I'm really struggling and I need to get some cash, I'm always going to lean towards hosting a one-day event, and these are all in person, because the conversion rate, the relationship that happens from there, is a lot higher than it is trying to do a webinar. But hosting a one-day in-person event is always going to be my go-to strategy for anyone that's looking to generate more leads or get some fast cash. And statistically, from any clients that I've worked with, they've been able to generate more than $10,000 to even $109,000 from one event. And so I'm confident in the process and what we do and what we work with people. But that's my one true offer, the one true system that works every single time. And you can get this done up and off the ground within 30 to 90 days for your first or next event.
Woo, man. That sounds like one intense time, but one great payday. That sounds beautiful. So, all right. Yeah. So, JR, I want to thank you for going over and joining us, giving us some wisdom, tossing in Jesus. Always love that, because that is our model, from the prayer room to the boardroom. We're going to give you the floor one more time to close it out. If you want to talk more about what's in the ticker, close us out in prayer, whatever way you want to do it. But the floor is yours, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah. So I just love to invite anyone, if you are a high-ticket coach or an entrepreneur or leader, and you're saying, hey, you know what, I want to be able to I need to generate more cash, or I need to generate more high quality leads, I would love to talk with you. Just book a call on my calendar. It's www.bookwithjr.com. That's bookwithjr.com. And I will talk to you exactly the process of what we can do to show you on how to start or launch your next one-day event. And so all you have to do is come with a heart that's hungry and committed to be resilient, and show up with excellence and ready to move. So if that's you, go to bookwithjr.com and schedule time on my calendar.